Okay, now we're with Neil Lareau, who works at the Mount Washington Observatory in the northern mountains of New Hampshire. And we have a major Arctic outbreak right now in the Northeast. Neil, thank you for being with me this evening.
Thanks, it's my pleasure.
Well, I have some questions for you. And before we get to that, I wanted to know, what are your current observations there right now?
Right now, the temperature is fluctuating between just a couple of degrees below zero and a couple of degrees above zero. We're actually seeing some rather remarkable quick temperature changes as warm air starts overriding some of the extremely cold air that flooded into the region over the last couple days. And even more interestingly than that, right now, the winds have just gusted to 140 miles an hour,
Wow.
which is actually the highest wind gust that we've seen so far this winter season.
Really? Now, what happens when, I know people are allowed to visit up there. Are they allowed to go out and feel those kind of up there? What did you get down to last night?
Just before midnight last night, we went to negative 45 degrees, and that set a record low for, I guess that would have been Thursday, and then today, Friday, after midnight, the low between midnight and now was negative 44 degrees.
Wow. Now, you guys have to go out in this, correct?
That is correct.
Once every hour you...
The ob. Sometimes in extreme conditions like this, we'll send two people out together. But many of the instruments are actually somewhat sheltered by the building from the worst of the winds, although when you do need to go on top of the tower, you're really taking the brunt of it. So you just use extreme care and exercise your own judgment. If you ever feel that it's too dangerous, you simply don't go outside. But that hasn't really happened yet. So,
how do you protect yourself from that kind of weather when you go on? It's not just a normal jacket, I'm assuming. You really have to use a lot of layers when you go outside?
Correct. Layering is really key. Depending on the temperatures, we have shell gear. We have bibs as well as good shell jackets that cut out the wind pretty well. Under that, over the past couple of days, been wearing layers of down, fleece, wool, and other synthetics, whatever it takes basically to keep yourself warm. And then the most important thing is keeping all flesh covered. So your face and hands especially, face masks, balaclavas, and goggles that all have to go together into a seamless unit so that literally no part of your skin is exposed.
Now, why do you need to go outside to look at these instruments when you have, I'm sure you have gauges and everything's wired there? What is the purpose of going outside?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is actually the primary reason that we're a manned observatory and can't simply rely on the digital equipment, is that the conditions are so extreme that electronic equipment actually has a very hard time keeping up with the conditions and very frequently fails. This means that we use a lot of older kind of analog equipment that doesn't have displays inside. Or we do have digital equipment, but we kind of use it as a reference and take the actual readings off of the analog equipment, the thermometers, for example, that are actually outside. The second reason is that part of the observations that we do include factors like cloud cover, cloud height, cloud types, and visibility, things that you can't determine when you're inside the building.
Correct. Right.
And that's things that we...
When you have high winds like you're having right now, can you hear it on the inside of the building? Do you feel the pressure and...
Yeah, there's definitely. I can actually hear it right now as we're talking. Whipping by the windows, the building starts to rumble under the higher gusts, and the building does actually become pressurized as well. To the extent that if somebody opens one of the exterior doors, sometimes your ears will pop, and sometimes opening even the interior doors into, say, the observation tower, you really have to lean your full body weight against it just to get the door open.
Jeez. You get any damage out there?
We do. We actually had a bit of damage earlier today. We had a protective cover over one of the vents on top of the building that had been installed earlier this year, and started lifting up, looked like it was going to blow away, so we weighted it down, and then gusted to about 130 and ripped it off, even with the weights on it. So.
Jeez. Is there any other buildings on that mountain that are suspect of these high winds, other than the observatory?
Yep, there's actually kind of a little collection of buildings up here on the summit. A lot of them just house radio equipment. We also have kind of a separate building for power supply for the generators that's somewhat attached to this. And then there's an older building that the observatory actually used to be in that's a wooden structure as opposed to the concrete building that we're in now. But none of those are kind of manned during the winter. We do maintain them and check on the equipment in them, but we live here just in the one Sherman Adams building.
So there's nobody really living on the mountain other than maybe down at a much lower level?
That is correct, and actually there isn't really anybody living at a much lower level until all the way down into the valleys, with the exception of there's a couple of caretakers at there's 2 huts down in Tuckerman's and Huntington's Ravine that are manned throughout the winter. There's a lot of winter climbing that takes place down there.
So how does somebody get up there to your observatory?
The way we get up is by snow tractor. There's a auto road that comes up the mountain that's open during the summer to the general public. During the winter, you can drive a snow tractor up those roads. Even sometimes weather conditions can be too extreme for that. But we do that once a week. Other than that, the only way to get up here in the winter is to hike.
Huh.
And that requires full winter equipment, crampons, ice axe, and being prepared to face temperatures well below zero.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable place.
Now, how long do you plan on being up there in the observatory?
I'm scheduled to be here through May. I've been here since August, so it's been a rare treat so far, and this week in particular has been the most remarkable.
You don't have, I guess you don't have television up there or any. Do you have regular communications? Actually,
we do. The older observatories, when it was just in a wooden building, were much more rustic than what we currently have. The new facility has full communications. We have telephone. We do have a television set up here just with rabbit ears and actually get decent reception. And then we also have internet connections that we use to distribute the weather observations that we take, run our website, post our pictures, and also get the forecast from the National Weather Service.
And that's mountwashington.org?
That is correct.
Well, we'll put a link underneath this audio clip for people to visit the website. It's a really neat website. You have a lot of stuff on there about Mount Washington. Well, Neil, I thank you very much for your time this evening, and I guess things are going to start warming up a little bit now over the next several days.
Yeah, that's correct. It's already, it's already 40 degrees warmer than it was at this time yesterday.
So when it's like 30 degrees, you probably don't even need a jacket anymore, do you?
It's amazing how quickly you get spoiled by the temperature. It does feel warm out now.
Wow, unbelievable. If I went in 30 degrees, my ears would fall off because right now, not to rub it in a little bit, but it's 68 degrees here right now. So.
Wow. I think the most extreme that we got yesterday was when the inside of the building was heated here till about 60 degrees, and it was about negative 40 degrees outside. So just stepping out the door, you were going through a 100-degree temperature change.
Jeez. Now, yeah, speaking of that was going to be another question I had. What do you have an emergency plan? What if your power goes out there? Or I imagine you have generators, but what if everything fails on you?
It actually happened last winter. The generator building on the summit actually burned down last winter. So it's something that's thought about a lot and planned for quite a bit. And it is a tricky situation, but one of the things to keep in mind is that being inside the building tends to be a lot safer, even if you don't have electricity or power, than being anywhere outside the building. So it really takes take a really quite remarkable circumstance to prompt us to really abandon the building, in which case we have a number of safety caches set up in the other buildings on the summit, and have rendezvous points and ways to keep warm up here until you could be evacuated from the summit by snow tractor.
Well, that's quite something that you're going through up there, and I guess I would encourage anybody to visit up there when it's available to be viewed.
Yep, just check the weather first is all that we ask.
Yeah. Well, Neil, thank you very much, and I'll let you get back to work, and we appreciate the good work you're doing up there on Mount Washington.
Okay, thanks a lot for calling.
Okay, Neil, thank you.
All right, take care.